That is not that kind of feeling I meant. That feeling I meant is that clear feeling of I exist, I am. You can either call it a thought or a feeling. No, it is not the normal thought. It's an obvious feeling. But as I said just now, if that is not obvious to you, then perhaps that knowing, the awareness in the mind is more obvious, then you stay with that. You have to find one of these four. You don't necessarily have to practice the first one. Although the third one is to ask yourself, I am what? Well, it's not that difficult, because actually it's very obvious. But the thing is, you must not look for it too hard. If you look for it too hard, you won't find it. It's like asking yourself, I have no head. Where is my head? The head is there. You just have to be aware of it, even though you can't see the head. You can't see your own head, isn't it? Of course, without a mirror. But it should be fairly obvious that you have a head. So in the same way, if somebody, for example, somebody wants to harm you, why do you feel threatened? Obviously because of the feeling of that ego, that I in you, isn't it? It is there all the time. It's so obvious that you don't have to look for it very hard. If you look for it very hard, you won't find it. As I said just now, if you have your eyes closed and you imagine you don't have a body, to ask you whether you exist, straight away you say, I exist. Right? Why? Because that feeling of that I exist is very strong. All the time is there. As long as you have the normal consciousness, it's there. If you don't find that so obvious, then you practice the last one. Just remind yourself, I am here. In the present, I am here. As long as you have that I in mind, then you are in the present. Because what is the difference between thinking and being in the present? When you are thinking, you are no more in the present, isn't it? You get caught up with the past or the future. So what you think carefully, what's the difference between the thinking state and the present state? When you are thinking, you get involved with the thoughts and you forget that I am here, isn't it? You get caught up with the thoughts. You are following the thoughts. You forget that I. But when you are in the present, that feeling of that I is very obvious. Whatever happens, I know. I am watching. That I is there. And this I we carry with us, moment to moment. Every moment, that I is there. It's always in the present. I am in the present. So when you make that I obvious in your mind, then the thoughts cannot arise because you're always in the present. That is why this practice of that I is very important if you want to stay in the present. Normally when we observe our body or our mind, when we practice that meditation, we tend to get caught up with the thoughts. So we need an anchor to anchor us in the present. And that anchor is that feeling of that I am here. Now this thing about who am I or I am what, Don't make it too abstract by thinking of all the possibilities. Just have that I in mind. The trick is to focus on that I. Just keep remembering that I. This I, this elusive I. Just keep it in your mind. So as long as you stay with that I, you are in the present. You see, the mind is always running, has been running for ages, lifetime after lifetime, and it's very difficult to get it under control. So this also is a way to control the mind, to stay with that I, to stay with the present. But the point is to not to allow the mind to run, to stay with the present. As now she asked the question whether certain jnanas can lead one to Chula Sotapanna. Is that the question? Oh. And I told her that the jnanas that are taught in certain meditations are not found in the discourses of the Buddha. So because it is not found in the discourses of the Buddha, we would not like to use them. Only what is found in the discourses of the Buddha, we want to use them. It might be correct, it might not be correct, so we'd rather stick to the discourses of the Buddha. If you look into the discourses of the Buddha, you find that the Buddha taught us how to practice meditation without telling us exactly what to expect. If we are told what to expect, then it becomes kind of, you don't have to practice anymore. What is enlightenment? Enlightenment or insight is to realize certain truths that were not obvious to you before. That is why it cannot be told to you. You have to go on a spiritual journey into your mind. And then when you get the insights, and then the real insight, you would realize, you realize such a thing which you never knew before. If you already known it before, then how can it be an insight? How can it be an awakening? Right? That is why in the suttas, the Buddha never told us what to expect. And you find like great meditation teachers like Ajahn Mun and other teachers also, they only tell you the steps to practice. They don't tell you exactly what to expect. Because if you are told, then how can you go on a journey to find that truth? That is the truth you are supposed to find. So how can you be told about it? So it is better that we practice according to what is in the discourses of the Buddha. We go by the original teachings of the Buddha. This meditation, if you learn something today, then you go back and try to practice it, so that by the next time you come, you have made a little progress, and then perhaps you have some questions to ask, or you encounter some problems, then you have something to ask. And you must remember in the suttas that the Buddha said the spiritual path is a gradual path. It is not a sudden path where you attain the paths and fruition suddenly. The Buddha gave a simile in the Samyutta Nikaya of a carpenter using an adze. This adze is for planing wood. The kind of adze that we have nowadays has two sticks sticking out. You hold the two sticks and you plane the wood. But during the time of the Buddha, it seemed like they held the adze in one hand and they planed the wood. Because the Buddha said after using the adze for many years, the carpenter looked at the adze and he found his fingerprints embedded, the impressions made in the wood, so that he knows that the wood has been worn away by his fingers. But the Buddha said he does not know how much of the wood he wore away yesterday. He does not know how much of the wood he wears away today. And he does not know how much of the wood he wears away at any other time. But he knows over a period of time that he has worn away the wood by the impressions made on the wood. So in the same way, the Buddha said, as we practice the spiritual path, we cannot tell how much of the defilements or the asavas we have eroded away at any particular time. But over the years, as we practice and our attachments decrease, our ego decreases, our anger decreases, then we know for sure that we have progressed. We have improved in so many ways. So don't go for quick results. This is a long distance run. It's not 100 meters dash. So you go for a long distance, you look at the long distance runner, he's got to have stamina to last a long distance run. A lot of people, they go off to a good start, a flying start, but they don't last very long. That's not a good runner in the spiritual journey. Some monks, after many years, also they disrobe. So that one that has lasting power is the real one. Please chant together. May I be well. May I be happy, free from enmity, free from suffering. Now we just meditate for a few minutes. We feel or imagine love coming towards us from all beings all around. Now we go to the next one. May all my beloved relatives be well. May all my beloved relatives be happy, free from enmity, free from suffering. Now we think of all our family members and all our loved ones. In the same way, we feel or imagine love radiating out from us towards all of them, individually or collectively. Now we come to the third one. May all my dear friends be well. May all my dear friends be happy, free from enmity, free from suffering. Now we think of all our friends. The same way we feel or imagine love going out to all of them. Think of them, think of their face, individually or collectively. Now we come to the last one. May all beings be well. May all beings be happy, free from enmity, free from suffering. Now we try to radiate love. Feel or imagine love going out to all beings around us, above and below, especially all unseen beings. We recite these 5 frequent contemplations that the Buddha advised all Buddhists to contemplate every day, left home persons as well as lay persons. I am of the nature to age. I have not gone beyond aging. I am of the nature to sicken. I have not gone beyond sickening. I am of the nature to die. I have not gone beyond dying. All that is mine beloved and pleasing, will become otherwise, will become separated from me. I am the owner of my karma, heir to my karma, born of my karma, related to my karma, abide supported by my karma. Whatever karma I shall do, for good or for ill, of that I shall be the heir. Thus we should frequently recollect. It's a very meaningful recollection, especially the first four. It is because of the first four that there is urgency for us to practice the spiritual path. Now we come into this meditation proper. As we did last week, we will start off by taking a few deep breaths at a natural pace, not too fast, not too slow. You can either take in through one nostril or both nostrils, and out through one nostril or both nostrils. But take a deep breath without holding the breath, letting it go about 10 times. This breathing exercise is very useful for people who don't exercise. Remove the stale air. Now we do some neck exercises to relax the body, especially the neck. When we sit in meditation, the neck has to support the weight of the head and to keep it straight. And the neck is one of those parts of the body which we very, very seldom exercise. So every time we sit down to meditate, we should make it a point to exercise the neck. The first exercise we do is just we bend back as far as possible and try to keep it there for a moment. Okay. Now we bend the head in a circular motion, either clockwise first or and then the reverse. We do that a few times. Most people who never exercise their neck will find that they are unable to bend their neck very low. But if you do it constantly, you are able to bend your neck quite low. Now we do the shoulder exercise. Just do like that, just to relax the shoulders. Now we sit straight. I mentioned last week, this sitting posture sometimes is not stressed often enough. We have to sit very straight, and that is to allow the free flow of the energy through our spine. And sitting straight means it's best to sit on a cushion, and if you are not straight enough, you tend to slouch a bit. Sometimes it's not very noticeable, but if you make a point of trying to make your abdomen come forward, then your body will, instead of being exactly vertical, it will slant forward slightly, and then you try to, not only your chest come out, but the abdomen also should try to come out a bit in line with the chest. Then we are sitting straight. Now all meditation has two parts to it. The one part is samatha practice, the other part is the vipassana practice. The samatha practice that we are going to do is the meditation on the self. Either when we close our eyes, we have a feeling of a self, either a feeling or a thought that I exist, I am. Even though you imagine you don't have a body, you still have this feeling that I exist. So you can stay with that feeling. Or the second way is, it might be more obvious to you, the awareness in the mind, the knowing mind, which the Ajahn Mun calls the knowing one. That knowing in the mind, we can also stay with that awareness or that knowing. That's the second way. The third way to practice this meditation on the self is to ask yourself. In the Chinese, the saying goes, who also say, and the idea is to fix your attention on the wall, on the eye. Normally in books they translate it as who am I? But when you translate it as who am I, some people make the mistake of contemplating on the who. You should contemplate on the I. I am what? So in trying to find out I am what, you try to look for the source of that I. Where is that I? What is that I? And the fourth way, if all these methods, the first three are not so easy, then you just remind yourself constantly, I am here in the present. I am here in the present. The idea is not to run after thoughts, not to allow the mind to think, because when the mind thinks, it is either thinking of things of the past, or it is thinking of the future, and you are not in the present. So you just remind yourself, I am here in the present, and then you will stay in the present with the I. Because the difference between thinking and being in the present is that when you are thinking, that you forget about the I. Ideas occupy your attention. But when you are in the present, you are aware of that I. I am here in the present. So, these four ways. First we practice this samatha practice of the first one is staying with that feeling, I am or I exist. The second one is to stay with the knowing mind, the awareness in the mind. The third one is to ask yourself, I am what? And try to look for the source of the I. And the fourth one is just to remind yourself, I am here in the present. Continually remind yourself, I am here in the present. So we'll just meditate perhaps for half an hour or so on this. Just now, after the neck exercises and sitting straight, and then we went on to the meditation. I forgot to mention that for most beginners, you should allow the first 5 minutes to relax. For the first 5 minutes of your meditation, don't make an effort to meditate, because your mind is quite scattered, and you just need to close your eyes and sit quietly and relax, and slowly that 5 minutes that gives the mind a chance to concentrate by itself, slowly, as you would say, warm up. We need a warming up period, about 5 minutes, so that later, after the 5 minutes, when you start to meditate, you won't develop a headache. A lot of people, they go straight into meditation, and when they try to focus their mind, before the mind is warmed up, is concentrated, then you develop a headache, especially if you put in a lot of effort. So always try to remember that. Now I'd like to talk a bit about the vipassana aspect of this meditation. Before we go into that, I'd like to just give a parable mentioned in the Samyutta Nikaya to make you understand how the mind works. The Buddha gave a parable of a hunter who caught 6 animals, and he tied each of these animals by a rope. And then these 6 ropes, he tied them together in a knot, and he allowed these animals, he let go of these 6 animals, and these 6 animals each took off in a different direction. These 6 animals were an eagle, a monkey, a snake, and crocodile or alligator, a dog, and a hyena. And then when these 6 animals were loosed, the eagle would want to fly up into the air naturally, and the monkey would want to climb up a tree. The snake would like to go into a hole to hide itself, and the crocodile would like to go into the water. The dog would head for the town to look for food, and the hyena would head for the hills because that's its natural home. So these 6 animals are tugging in 6 different directions. And the Buddha said, at any one time, whichever animal is stronger, it would pull and the others have to follow it. And then when it got tired, another animal which was stronger would pull the rest, and the rest would have to follow him. So this tug of war goes on all the time. This parable illustrates the working of our mind. We have 6 sense doors representing these 6 animals. And our 6 senses are pulled by the 6 sense objects. And so our attention is continually going out through the 6 sense doors, depending on whichever sensation is stronger. Suppose now you're sitting here and listening to this meditation class, and suddenly a car went by outside and maybe it sounded a horn. Then immediately your attention goes there. And then perhaps later a thought comes to your mind and your attention goes to the thinking. Then another moment perhaps you get a mosquito bite and then your attention goes there. So our attention is going out to the 6 senses all the time. And because our attention is going out to the 6 senses, our energy is scattered. Now the Buddha said, to tame the 6 animals, what the hunter would have to do is to take the 6 ropes and tie it to a stout post or a stout pole. And then these 6 animals, whichever direction they headed for, they would only be able to manage to go round this pole, round and round this pole until they are tired, and then become very docile, and they just lie down beside the pole. So in the same way, the Buddha said, if we want to tame the mind, we have to anchor it to one object of meditation. And then the 6 senses are always trying to pull our attention away from that object of meditation, but we have to keep it, always pull it back to that one object of meditation, and slowly with practice we are able to tame the mind. That is the purpose of the samatha practice, to tie our attention to one object of meditation. In this case, it is that feeling of that I exist, that I. Now the vipassana part is, vipassana means contemplation. Contemplation. As you just now from the parable, you know that the mind is always contemplating the 6 sense objects, and it's always going out to the 6 sense doors. So contemplation comes naturally. However, in vipassana practice, we have to train the mind to look inwards. The mind, the attention of the mind is always drawn outwards. And so we know the external world very well, especially the world of the 5 senses. The seeing, the hearing, the smelling, taste and touch. And so but we don't reverse the light. We don't see the opposite direction. We don't look inside. And because of that, we don't know our inner self. We only know the outer world and what we take to be the self. Now when our attention is turned outwards, then we take the self to be this body and this thinking mind, the thoughts. So this mind and this body, lifetime after lifetime, we have been taking to be the self. But this is the mortal self, the mortal part of us that always dies. After a certain period, it dies, and then it's born again. It ages, sickens, and then it dies. And if we keep taking only this mortal part to be ourself, then we are always in this cycle of existence. And this cycle of existence, the first noble truth says, is suffering, dukkha. So when we reverse our attention and look inwards, we are trying to look for our inner self. There is an inner part of us which is immortal. What the Buddha calls the unconditioned, the unborn, the uncreated. And what in other religions sometimes they call as the God nature. For example, in the Bible it is stated, man is made in the image of God. It is not the mortal part of us. It is not the body. It is not the mind. It is the immortal part of us within. So that is why we always try to look within, always focus our attention within. Try to anchor it on the feeling of that self. This feeling of a self is a very kind of illusory thing. It gives rise to the concept of an ego, that I, that self. But that self, it has two, as I mentioned just now, two aspects, the mortal part and the immortal part. And if we only know the mortal part, then we are always in this round of rebirths. And so we want to know the immortal part of us. And if we know the immortal part of us, we go back to our source. That is why when we meditate on the self, slowly when we are able to concentrate the mind, when we are able to get some control over our mind, then we try to channel our attention back to the source. That is the aim of meditation, for us to go back to our original source, to our immortal nature. So, in the vipassana part, every day we are conscious of what is happening around us. We are conscious of seeing, of hearing, smelling, taste, touch and thoughts. But usually we don't have sati. And what is this sati? Sati is often translated as mindfulness. But it is not mindfulness of the six objects of the six consciousness. Because that one you don't have to make an effort to be conscious of the six objects of mindfulness. It happens all the time. It happens naturally, just like just now the parable of the six animals. We are always pulled by these six objects of the six consciousness. We don't have an effort, we don't have to make an effort to be aware, to be conscious of these six objects. Our attention is always pulled out to these six objects of consciousness. What we have to be mindful about is always to remind ourselves that this body and this mind is not the real self. It is the mortal part of us. And it is the part where we have the feeling of this person. I am so and so. You have a name, you have a form. But when we practice sati, we keep on reminding ourselves that whatever is happening in our consciousness, that is just phenomena that is happening naturally. So every day, every moment of your wakeful state, you just keep reminding yourself, this is body and this mind is not I, is not mine, is not myself. This is not I, this is not mine, this is not myself. And then if we are aware of that, then we try not to get involved. We try to observe how the ego always surfaces, how the ego is always trying to reassert itself. For example, when you hear somebody say something unpleasant, immediately you get angry, and then you see your ego working. You start thinking, I can't stand this. I have to do something. Or what do I deserve to be told off like that, or whatever. So you see the mind is seething, is frothing, because the ego of that ego. So when you recognize that ego, then we try not to react. We just see it is just this ego, this Satan in us, this Mara in us that is trying to assert itself. So every day we try to do that. And if we are able to do that, then we slowly let go. We let go of reacting. We don't react. We just observe. We don't react. It's not easy. In other words, you are trying to behave like an enlightened person. And if you start behaving like an enlightened person, slowly, you will become an enlightened person. If you don't behave this way, then you are always that same person. If you are just mindful of the 6 objects of consciousness, then all history repeats itself. When an object impinges on your senses, then a feeling arises, then perception arises after that, and volition and thinking and all that, and it repeats, and the thought proliferates. One thought multiplies into 10 thoughts, 10 thoughts multiplies into 100 thoughts, and then you see that ego in action. So this is the real letting go. Letting go is not the outside. Letting go is the inside. It's very difficult to do. It's much easier just to observe what's going on in the world.